There are a lot of stories on the internet of demonic possession, and whether you have found them to be true or utter nonsense, the people in these stories have nothing to gain by telling you of their first-hand experiences. It'll be up to you to decide whether they are true or not. So grab your holy water and clutch your rosary. Here are 5 stories about possession. Enjoy. One of my teachers used to work at a boarding school, and one night, during a school movie night, a student left to use the restroom, and after a bit of time had gone by, my teacher went to check on her to make sure she was okay. She wasn't. She was huddled in the corner of a shower, foaming at the mouth, with bloodshot eyes. My teacher freaked out and called a couple of others over, and the chick started spewing out random incoherent things in a really deep voice. Eventually, she snapped out of it and didn't remember a thing. They went to her dorm room after and said she had written on her bunk bed, "I love Satan." By they going back to the dorm, I meant my teacher and 2 other supervisors. After this incident, the girl left the school. I'm 6'2", a rather fit man. I practice Aikido and can bench 240 pounds. My father and his brothers are large as well. One of my aunts is probably about 5'4", 110 pounds. And there was a time when she went plain crazy. She would get incredibly angry, out of control at random times, spitting nonsense words. And there would be absolutely no way I, or my father, or both of us, would be able to get her down. She had 10 times my strength. We needed 4 to actually pin her down and get her to stop moving until she calmed down. This was extremely scary. She could just pop off at any time and go crazy. Now, I didn't believe in the supernatural, but my grandmother, a rather traditional Moroccan woman, was convinced she was possessed. And honestly, it really felt like it. For those who don't know it, Morocco has a pretty big culture about supernaturalism, sorcery, possession, and exorcism. So most of the elders in the family firmly believe it. Fast forward a few months later, and it was getting way too difficult for us to handle her. My uncle contacted a good friend in Morocco who has an exorcist in his family. The exorcist asked us to do one rather twisted thing. He asked if my aunt would put a drop of her blood in a glass of water and leave the glass somewhere in the apartment while she's sleeping. We were reluctant, but my grandmother forced her to do it. In the morning, the glass was empty. I'm still convinced she probably just woke up at night and drank it. But the exorcist version was, she was possessed, and giving him the blood was just a way for you to welcome him and calm him down temporarily. She needs to see an exorcist as soon as possible. We were convinced he was right. Seeing her often getting crazier and crazier. Sometimes you just choose to believe a possible solution. So at this point, I decided to believe, and we had to get proof that he was right. We live in France and decided to go to Morocco. This was a 1,500-kilometer drive, plus a 6-hour boat ride, and then another 500-kilometer drive into Morocco. During the drive, I've never been as scared as this day. I was sitting down behind, on the right, my father on the left, my aunt between us. She went crazy at one point. We couldn't really hold her as she was trying to hit my uncle who was driving. We almost ran into a wall. My father had to choke her until she lost some strength. Finally, we're in Morocco, and we come to this village named Sefro, known as one of the biggest places in the country where sorcery happens. A rather creepy place, and not in a conventional creepy way. What we know of creepy are just what horror movies show us. The African creepy is on another level. We get to meet this exorcist guy. He asks us to buy a sheep to sacrifice and tells us we should bring him the sheep's guts for the exorcism to happen. My father and uncle take care of this. Me, I'm fucking scared. As I stated earlier, I didn't believe in this shit. But at this point, I decided to because honestly, the situation called for it. In a freaking spooky village in the middle of Morocco, where we were advised to never eat anything outside, or accept anything from strangers who might try to curse us, where everything looks twisted as fuck. I was losing it, and I couldn't wait to leave this place forever. The following day, we went to the exorcist, bringing him the guts. He puts them in a bowl. He asks that if we are feeling strong enough, we should stay with him, as more people would make it easier to exorcise my aunt. I really wanted to leave, but seeing everyone else staying, I decided to stay as well. My aunt is lying down in front of us, next to the bull. We are sitting down around her holding hands, and the exorcist starts saying stuff I cannot understand. He gets sweaty, starts to talk faster. I see my aunt twitching in pain. The light went out, and I'm pretty sure I peed my pants at this moment. The exorcist screams something. My aunt screams as well. Then complete silence. I think the silence was for about 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. The exorcist's assistant then comes in with a lamp, and we see that both my aunt and the exorcist passed out. The bowl is on the floor and the guts next to it turned black. I have goosebumps just writing that and repicturing it. The assistant urges us not to touch the guts at any cost. The exorcist wakes up, puts some water on his face, then tells us to follow him to a nearby hill on top of it, where he asks us to burn the guts right there, as the demon was now possessing the sheep, and we could not get rid of it. Done. When I was 14, my best friend and I at the time got a Ouija table and decided to play with it. We got into a dark room, lit some candles, and started. Another friend of ours knocked on the door as we tried to contact the spirits. We let her in and resumed. This third person kept mocking us as we tried to get the supernatural messages, when all of a sudden, she passed out. We thought she was joking. But then when she opened her eyes, she started to talk with a voice that wasn't hers. It was damn scary, but we still thought she could be playing with us. Then she laughed, horrible laughter, and started to retell stories of things that happened to me that I never had said to anyone. And same for my best friend. Candles started flickering, and the flames went a bit too high for my skeptical being not to shiver. My best friend ran out of my house straight to her neighbor, who was a candombless mother of saint. When the woman came to my place and saw our friend, she gasped and told us to help bring the girl to her place. We did, but not before getting some scratches by not allowing her to get undressed in daylight, calling to some men that were looking at us as we marched toward the Holy Mother's place. Once there, she locked herself with the girl in a room and told us to wait outside. I don't know what happened, but after a couple of hours, our friend came out, very tired, and didn't remember a thing. The Mother of Saint told us not to play with what we cannot control. The high school I went to was a religious private school. Senior year, it was traditional for the entire senior class to go on a religious retreat up to a remote resort in the mountains with a few teachers. The point of the retreat was to grow closer to each other as a class and also find God, experience spirituality. They took away our phones and forbade us from using any form of the internet or communication with the outside world. Then they made us go through a series of soul-bearing exercises and speeches. Pretty cheesy stuff, not that exciting. On the third day of the retreat, however, the entire grade is in the main hall doing an hour of silent prayer, which is pretty much like meditation, but we were supposed to be communicating with God. All of a sudden, there's a huge crash, and everyone looks over to see a girl toppled over onto the floor. As everyone stares, she starts writhing around on the ground and screaming, but not screaming in pain. The voice she was screaming in was a strange, deep voice that didn't sound like her at all. Someone yelled, "She's seizing." I remember this because there was a girl in our class who was known to have epileptic seizures and would do it in assembly pretty frequently, but this wasn't the same girl. At this point, she stood up and started yelling in tongues. Her eyes rolled back into her head. She kept twitching back and forth. She started to run all around the room, yelling in unintelligible gibberish language, and every now and then, she would run at the cross in the middle of the room and then run back, screaming and crying. At first, I honestly thought it was a dumb high school prank to freak everyone out. But if that was it, she took it way too far. The teachers tried to calm her down, but she just kept screaming in this weird language. She started pulling on her hair, so one of the teachers called an ambulance, but we all knew it would take a while for them to get to this remote retreat. Another teacher tried to take her by the shoulders, and she dug her nails into his arm really hard and just kept screaming. It took several more minutes to calm her down. At this point, the teachers evacuated us from the room. And then she just went quiet. They took the girl away that night, and she never came back to school after the retreat was over. My friend is Mexican, just like me. So our families believe a lot of crazy shit. My friend's mom believed that someone had put a curse on her, seeing as how so many weird and unfortunate things have been happening to her lately, her rapidly decreasing health as well. Back in her village, you'd hire a brujo for this stuff. She searched around and finally found a reputable one. He paid her house a visit, and turns out that she had been cursed, according to him. A jealous ex-lover of her husband had put a curse on her. He even said that she was lucky to still be walking. He then said he was going to perform a ritual that night in order to dispel the evil. But she had to completely relax and close her eyes. He was going to summon a great spirit who was not supposed to be seen by humans. The brujo does his business, while her daughter, my friend, is there for support. The brujo starts chanting, and the room became very loud and heavy, gradually building up. She couldn't see anything because her eyes were closed, but she felt a presence in the room. She then heard growling and howling and all sorts of animalistic noises. The brujo then said he had found a willing wolf spirit to trace and get rid of the curse. My friend told me at that point she pretty much shit herself, waiting for it to be over. After a few hours, the noises finally stopped, and the room felt light again. The man then said that the spirit had done its job, and that her mom was good to go. The crazy part is, the next day, her mother was healthy as an ox. What do you think? Were these people possessed, or were these elaborate hoaxes by terrific pranksters? Either way, the people that witnessed these occurrences were left terrified, with a memory they can never erase. If you have a story or an idea you would like to see featured here, please contact me through any of my social media links, or email me at DuchessDark676@gmail.com. See you next time.